Exactly. I'll give you a short intro in what this next panel is going to be about. Exactly. My panelists are already awaiting. 1 second. We are going to talk now about the AI Act. So we heard a lot of use cases today. How can AI help businesses transform their products, their processes? However, AI is not working in a vacuum, but we have a regulatory and, of course, a societal landscape in which we are working and living. And now the European Union has proposed an act, the Artificial Intelligence Act, where they try to regulate how especially high-risk AI use cases should be overlooked by the developers, by the companies that are using them. Today I'd like to discuss how the proposal is evaluated so far by companies. For that, I have 3 great guests, and of course also how the German government is evaluating the proposal so far. I kindly invite you to come on the stage, all of you. I'll start to my left, exactly, with Andreas Hartl. Please have a seat. You all have your microphones beside you, and I'll give a short round of introductions, but it won't take too long from our discussion. Exactly. Andreas Hartl, he is head of the Division for Artificial Intelligence, Data Economy and Blockchain at the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate. Since 2017, I think you're a lawyer by training, by background, and we already discussed a lot about the AI Act, so I'm very happy to have you here and provide your insights and views. Beside him is Dr. Tobias Heimann. He's head of artificial intelligence of Siemens Healthineers. He has a background in medical informatics, did a PhD in medical image recognition, I think. So he'll provide the technical view, how the requirements by the AI can actually work in AI systems. So great to have you. Then we have Nadja, Dr. Nadja Kroha as well, also a lawyer by training, so colleagues more or less. Exactly, she is a senior expert government affairs at Allianz, senior expert digital regulation, sorry Nadja. And she worked a long time in politics, I think, and now is at Allianz responsible exactly for the AI Act and also discussing with me a lot of use cases and also the technical challenges. So great to have you as well. And last but not least, Svea Windwehr. She is a senior government affairs and public policy analyst at Google. You got your master's degree from Oxford Institute, and you will provide, I think, besides 2 already very regulated areas, Google as well is now dealing with digital regulation as well, but has kind of the core AI built into its business models. So I'm curious to see the different perspectives on the topic, and exactly, let's get the discussion started, I think. I'd like to start. I just mentioned this, Nadja, Tobias, you're already active in areas where there's a lot of regulation going on. Medical products, for example, banking, finance, insurance. It's not like you can do what you want. How do you assess the proposal of the Commission so far? How do you see the interaction between what's already there and what the AI proposes? What do you expect from when the proposal comes into place, how that will play out? Tobias, maybe you want to start, and Nadja, you add.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Thank you for the question. Great question to start with, right? So in general, we endorse this new proposal of legislation of AI products. Of course, especially in healthcare, this is an area where it's super important to have trust in the products. Also, of course, in products that include AI technology. So I'm not sure if everybody is aware of that. So AI in healthcare, it's not a vision, it's a fact. Yeah. So right now, alone us as a company, we have more than 60 AI-enabled products or products using AI technology in healthcare that are used in Europe, right, and sold in Europe. So, and of course, we have very, very strict guidelines and quality management systems for these systems, as well as for all the other medical devices. And indeed, we do have a regulation already that is governing that, and that is the MDR, the Medical Devices Regulation, right, which covers all medical products, but also, and this is very unique, it also covers standalone software, right? So in healthcare, we are actually the only field right now where we have a CE mark on standalone software products. With approval of the notified bodies and the quality processes, etc. So, and this is working very well, and this is also what we would like to keep. So our main point regarding the AI Act is that we endorse the quality that should come with that for AI products, but we would like to maintain the system of the MDR that is already working very well. And of course, we would not like any potential complications between these two frameworks, right?
Thank you, Tobias. Nadja, maybe you want to add, we already collect for Andreas, so he can take that up exactly after a quick round from the industry. Yeah,
it does work. So I'm able to cut it short because more or less I agree with what you said. We are already a very, very highly regulated sector. In our opinion, most of the pain points the AI Act wants to address is already addressed in the insurance sector. For example, we have the Insurance Distribution Directive, which cares about how we are advising our customers. So we are obliged to have the best interest of our customers at heart. That's already law. So we don't want to be double regulated. We don't want to have contradicting regulation. So far, the Annex 3, the high-risk list maintained by or proposed by the Commission, doesn't contain insurance. Then there are some actors who want to have insurance there. Of course, we're opposed to that. And then there are a lot of technical requirements we are not really happy with.
Thank you, Nadja. Maybe, Svea, you just want to add on that, because you coming from a little different background, I guess, and interesting topic is also DSGVO, maybe in interaction with the AI Act, but maybe you just want to share your initial evaluation of the proposal so far with us.
Yeah. Sure, happy to. Yeah, so I think similar to Siemens Allianz, I would also say that Google is already quite regulated by a lot of overlapping existing regulation, of course, in the European Union, also in the US. So, of course, this is a statement you would expect from industry, but it's still true that the internet is not a Wild West anymore, and there is a whole plethora of existing regulation that also applies to AI. So you already mentioned GDPR. Of course, the Digital Services Act has an impact on AI systems, for example, those used in recommender system context. There's also existing legislation on product safety, product liabilities. Of course, those things are also really important to us and will also inform our approach to the AI Act overall. Our CEO has once said that AI is too important not to regulate, and I think that's really true. And with that sort of, against that backdrop, we're really pleased and supportive of the Commission proposal. I think what's really important and what we're really supportive of is this risk-based approach, which makes a lot of sense, not to put all AI applications in one bucket, but to really look at the particular risks that arise in different situations and how to effectively manage that. So that would also be the most important aspect for us to maintain, and I think we'll probably talk about general purpose AI later. But in that sense, what's most important for us is to really look at how can we effectively implement this, and what types of responsibilities and obligations make sense for which actors along the supply chain. Those are our main comments, really. But overall, I think it's a really, really strong proposal. And it's also clear the Commission has gone out of its way to balance the need to regulate AI with the need to protect innovation. And I think that's also really positive.
Yeah, thank you, Svea. I think now, Andreas, we now collected a little. they're coming all from at least a kind of limited sectors, medicine, banking. Google also, I think, has sometimes a wider approach. And now you have to somehow tackle all of these in one proposal. How do you expect the interaction to work? Because the Commission, of course, they thought about how it will interact. But I think exactly to the operationalization in the end, it's still a little unclear to a lot of companies. How do you think that will play out after now in the process and of course when the regulation is in place?
First of all, thank you for having me, and it's really great to have a physical event. Now, let me first say that I think the interventions from the industry colleagues were balanced, and I think I can subscribe to most of what you said. No inconsistencies, no contradictions between legislation. Of course, a risk-based approach. I think we also endorse this approach. In general, we from scratch supported the Commission with the endeavor of finding a way to have a trustworthy approach to artificial intelligence. And I mean, there was a long story starting in maybe 2016, 17 with the OECD, starting with a discussion on how to find a trustworthy approach to AI. So now we are discussing the AI Act, and it's really a lot to digest. Maybe some of you have heard that alone from the European Parliament there are more amendments proposed than back a couple of years to the GDPR. So I think this is just an anecdotal fact to show how complex the issue is. But I mean, the issue is important. And so I think when it comes to what you asked, how to ensure that there will be a swift implementation also from the industry, I think this is one of the key areas. And of course, what I would say is that the principal approach to use the new legislative framework, so to have a product regulation, an AI system can only be put into service or put on the market if it abides or complies with certain essential requirements. I think in principle this approach is well known also to the industry, not necessarily to those fields of application in Annex 3. And yeah, we have also some very intense discussion within the ministerial departments of the federal government. We're trying to shape the discussion also to be a very constructive part of the discussion. And I think there still is a window of opportunity also to make sure that when it comes to the requirements, the innovation support system, that we can have some improvements there. And of course, the reality check from colleagues from the industry is very valuable for us as government, as representative of a ministry.
Exactly. Continuing exactly on that point, reality check. Because, of course, the proposal isn't final yet. Nevertheless, we have some quite concrete requirements, e.g. Articles 8 to 15. So, accuracy, for example. You need human oversight if you have a high-risk AI system. Tobias, Nadja, I know that you already discussed some of these points. Do you know what to do when the AI Act comes into place with regards to these requirements? What is your approach? How do you prepare to enact those within your company for any high-risk AI system you are using? Sure.
Well, correct me if I'm telling rubbish, because what I would say, you see in those requirements that the Commission had in mind the product liability regime in Europe. So tangible products, which you know very well, which we don't at all, because we don't have tangible products. So, and you can see that, at least that's what my data scientists with whom I read those requirements in depth. We had a workshop, or 3 workshops that turned out to be, were needed in about 15 hours in total, just to read and try to understand those requirements in Chapter 3, I think, or Title 3 those you were mentioning, and they told me, well, just for example, that even a human oversight, it works if you have a machine in mind, where a human is sitting and watching that the machine is working properly, and then have kind of a stop button. It doesn't work in automation when you have just software system. And what we do in practice is a lot of process optimization. So getting better better services faster to the customers. We don't use it really in building insurance products. And we have no tangible products at all. So my colleagues told me it really doesn't work so good for standalone software systems which are integrated in larger software systems.
Yeah, that's interesting, because there our perspective is actually quite different, because we do have some machines where we believe human oversight will not be of much use, right? So if we think about lab automation systems, right, where we use AI to detect if there are any problems with the probes, for example, that are going through these machines. And of course, these super high-speed systems, right, processing of these probes. This is why we are using AI, to making it that efficient. So there, of course, yeah, we could put a button that if something is going wrong with the analysis, a human can push it and the system is stopped. But who's going to look through these high-speed camera images and be better than the machine, right? Or have a higher accuracy. So there, in that scenario, it does not make that much sense to have the button. In other scenarios where we have standalone software, for example, yeah, for us, it's very typical to have software systems that give recommendations, yeah, regarding diagnosis or best treatment for a system. So these are standalone software systems, but there, of course, it makes sense to have human oversight, because we want to have the physician there be in the pilot chair, so to speak, right? And the systems that we build and that we provide are as an assistance to the physician, but the physician should have the last word, take the input, and then decide, right? So their human oversight is very important, even for standalone software. So, and I think this already shows that it's kind of difficult to have like a one rule to fit all the applications, right? And right now, human oversight, I believe, is a basic requirement, yeah, in the AI Act. So there, it would be more realistic, yeah, coming to this real world check, to add something, well, human oversight where it makes sense and where it reduces risks, right? So to make that really sensible, yeah.
Okay, Tobias, exactly. I think that's coming back to what Svea said. The risk-based approach is central to the AI Act, so that you actually reduce or provide regulation only there where risk can arise. So that's, for example, in Annex 3, not always sure whether that's working out. I think the Council right now is discussing this as well, the Parliament as well, how to make sure that the risk-based approach is working. Svea, you already mentioned it as well. We saw now how the actual requirements might be a challenge. You, I think, are already thinking ahead, like the other companies as well, how to implement it. But you're also at the point right now where the proposal itself might change so much that it has a whole different meaning for you. So referring to the inclusion of general purpose AI, maybe you just want to provide that perspective as well.
Yeah, sure. So general purpose AI, this has been a very heated discussion in Brussels and in other capitals, for those who haven't followed this super closely over the past months. Before diving in, maybe let's take a step back. What is general purpose AI? So really, general purpose AI are AI systems that are by definition generic and do not have a default purpose. So for example, classic example would be a natural language processing model. We could use that to build, let's say, a translation app, and that again could be used, I know, in a chatbot or an application that analyzes medical records. So in that sense, general purpose AI is a bit like a brick. Bricks can be used to build a school, a hospital, a government building, a military facility. As a manufacturer of bricks, you're not really going to know how they're going to be used in the end. and you're also not really going to know much about the risk associated with that particular use case. So general purpose AI is very similar in that sense that it is really impossible. The risk is context dependent. It is not high risk by definition, but depends on the context that it's used in, which is really difficult to know for providers of general purpose AI. So, of course, now the big discussion is how to include this in the AI Act. For me, it's not really a discussion about exclusion or inclusion. I think it's about finding responsibilities or defining sensible responsibilities to effectively manage risk. Because I think that the overall goal is clear and one that should be supported by everyone. Of course, high-risk applications of AI that use general-purpose AI components the AI Act must be applicable to them. I think that's very obvious that we need to manage risk in those situations. The question is how to do it. And from our perspective, the current problem is that many of the requirements that providers of general-purpose AI would have to follow at the moment are near impossible to comply with as a provider because we don't have the insight how people are going to use these systems. So Google is one of the largest providers of, or not providers, but contributors and maintainers of open source software and general purpose AI models, and we simply don't know what people do with that. Like, we release them out into the open, onto the internet, and people are free to use these components and building blocks in their own products, projects, experiments. So that's what makes it so hard to be compliant with obligations, for example, to have data sets that are complete, error-free, or to effectively manage biases, unnecessary biases, or unfair biases in certain situations. The problem is that those aspects or those things are also really context dependent. So if you go back to our translation app, if we use them in both the chatbot and the medical application, we're gonna be using very different training sets to fine-tune these applications, and that will change how we think about risk in those contexts, how we think about bias in that context, how we think about how to mitigate that bias in those situations. So those things can really only be effectively dealt with at the application level. I'm not saying that there's no role for providers of general purpose AI, so I think it's really important that where providers of general purpose AI allow for the use of those systems to be used in high-risk situations or contexts, that they do as much as they can to provide documentation, transparency. But I think we should be careful and have a bit of a narrower approach and especially protect open source software.
Thank you, Svea. So we now saw some of the problems relating to Articles 8 to 15 that also come with the insecurities around the responsibilities in the value chain of AI systems, because it's exactly maybe not like a physical product, even I might simplify it too much as well, but that an AI system has so many forth and back going within a value chain and so many responsibilities that are divided between the stakeholders, that they at least makes the proposal or the interpretation of the proposal quite hard. How much is the discussion around, of course, first, how the requirements, Article 8 to 15, need to be implemented exactly? I think you discussed that. For example, the requirement that data sets need to be error-free, I think, slowly being at least taken a little more realistically within the discussion in the council, but also in parliament. But as well, the whole issue around the value chain, is that in discussion? How do you think, should the proposal maybe provide more flexibility? Should it be more explicit? Maybe you can provide us, your insights.
Thank you. How many hours do I have? Now, maybe just quickly on the Article 10, Para 3, I think it is, the free of error. Well, I think the proposal was not free of error, and we will fix this. I think it's quite clear that something which is impossible cannot be demanded. And being free of error and at the same time accurate and, complete is in practice impossible. So I think the current proposal of the Czech presidency is to the best effort or utmost effort, I don't know. So I think this is, to me, more or less out of discussion, that we will have a patch there. So, before I come to general purpose AI, just quickly on human oversight, because I think this is very important, because human oversight is important because we are talking about a technology family which is associated with autonomy of a machine. And we are talking about something where we already have a provision in the GDPR where personal data is processed. You have the right, I'm not sure, I'm not a GDPR expert, but there's, I think 21, which says that if there's a decision only on processing data, you have the right that a human has a look into it. You have a right for a decision taken by a human being. And I think we should really not lose track of what we're talking about. We are talking about systems that might be, and hopefully some systems will be, working autonomously because they are more effective, more capable than human beings, and this should serve to the best of humanity. Violence playing, I know. But I think there's something really in it, and it's limited to high-risk AI. And high risks come when I think health, safety, and fundamental rights are in play. So it's not, in a way, a baseline requirement. It's an essential requirement for high-risk AI. But of course, we can talk about details. If, like this system analyzing probes, really should be assessed being high risk. I think this is where the discussion is relevant. Now, general purpose AI. Let me just quickly say that I was a bit irritated when I first read the acronym GPAI, because I was, in the team of establishing the general partnership, the global partnership on AI, and the acronym is GPAI. Comes from the G7 process, an initiative by President Macron and Justin Trudeau, just as a sidekick. General purpose AI. I think to me, the main question is actually, what is the role of the state as a regulator or legislator? Why is this, for me, the main question? We're talking about liability on the supply chain. At the end, the final provider has certain responsibilities and obligations in the relation to the user. And then the question is, if the provider itself has a company that supplied the system, is a supply chain issue. And if there's no lack respecting the rights and interests of the user, why should the state regulate? So now this could be maybe the question if, liability comes from responsibility. Responsibility goes with the ability to control. I think the question is, who actually can control what? Who has the responsibility for what? To me, this is an open question. And I know the discussion is ongoing, but to me it comes down to the issue of who actually is responsible, who can control what. And it might indeed be that we need some provisions in the AI Act in the general interest of the market and in the interest of the user. But at the moment, I still don't have a solution. Sorry for that, but I'm glad that we have this discussion. But sorry, I cannot be more concrete. This is really something we are studying at the moment. What really is the role of the state, of the legislator, and what could be left to the market? Why couldn't, on the supply chain, the market actors rule it on themselves? Maybe we have some dominance issues, but this is something, maybe we can have a discussion on that. How do you see this issue?
Can I quickly reply to that?
Sure.
I think that is also already happening. So I think there is a lot of existing documentation that comes with open source models. So I think I'm not sure whether this is actually such a problem as the discussion makes it out to be. I think in most cases, providers of open source general purpose AI systems do their utmost to provide as much documentation and insight to the people who actually use them. So I agree with you. I think it's actually a really good question. Like, how much is this really like a question, like a problem where the government needs to come in place? I think from my perspective, like the safest bet would be to say that okay, providers of AI systems have to comply with Article 11 with general purpose AI systems, but all the other requirements that are really just impossible to know if you don't actually put that AI system like out into the wild, out into the market in a particular application, that should really be down to the deployer, as we like to call them, or users of the system.
11 is risk management, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a short comment, maybe. Yeah. First, I believe these open source toolkits, right, are super important, right, for the development of AI. And without the open source toolkits, I think we wouldn't see like 10% of the applications and of the progress that we have seen in the past years. Pretty much everybody is using them, right? And now, of course, as a company, right, I would love to have some law that tells me, okay, yeah, Google TensorFlow, yeah, and some other open source toolkits need to be 100% error-free, yeah. That would make life very easy for us, yeah. But to be honest, as a researcher and scientist, I don't see a way how that could be done. And that's the beauty of open source, that there are many people looking at it and many people are using it. So hopefully errors are discovered soon. And I mean, when it comes to us, we need to do quality management of our systems anyway, right? And need to check that the results are actually fine for their intended purpose. Yeah, this is also what the MDR requirement is. So maybe there is a bug in TensorFlow or two, right? But if the outcome is still sufficiently high quality, then it's not ideal, but I would say it's probably okay, right? In any way, it just shows like that it's a very tricky question. Yeah.
Yeah, and talking about risk management, of course you need to manage AI risk. So not to create any misunderstanding, but my point was, we are, as Allianz, we are risk managers at heart. Managing risk is our core business. So of course we have huge risk management systems in place. We are obliged by law, by Solvency II regime of the European Union, to have a special kind of risk management system in place. And at the moment, as we speak, we are trying to implement a new risk, AI risk, in that risk management system. But what would not be helpful would be if we were obliged to create a completely new risk management from scratch, which only and especially risk manages AI risks. That just would be a burden without help to anyone. And I think there are a lot of more industries out there who already have similar obligations and systems. And so I would like to petition that you really give the reality check a chance. Yeah, and rather than being fast with the legislation, do it really good, because then I think it's a chance for us all, not just to burden companies and developers, but really to protect the public and our single market.
Maybe, Nadja, directly on that point for the last 5 minutes, because my question all the time is from the Bitkom perspective. If now AI Act comes into place and you already have a risk management system, and now you have the AI Act also asking for a risk management system, will it be integrated? Will you make the check, okay, I have that already fulfilled within the banking regulation and I don't need to do it again? Tobias, I guess similar questions for you arising, but that's what I'm wondering.
Right. So, I mean, the AI Act, right, follows the NLF, right, which means right now we are discussing the legal text. Yeah, and from that there will be developed like harmonized standards, right, which are more specific, instructions of how we can build products, in the industry that comply with this legal text. Now, the creation of these harmonized standards is very time intensive. There needs to be a lot of people involved to make sure that all the angles are covered, etc. So this is not something that you do like in 6 months. So as a comment, I believe right now the time foreseen for the implementation of the AI Act is 2 years, right? So this, from our experience, also what we have observed with MDR, is much too short, right? So there we would say, with a reality check, 4 years are probably more suitable, because you have to build up so much infrastructure, all the databases, the notified bodies, you need to educate people how to use them, you need to develop these harmonized standards, and this should be done well, and right for the first time. This is, I think, super important. So, and then, of course, since you were mentioning, like, where does that maybe contradict the systems you're already working with? Right now, all our quality management systems, all our risk management systems, this life cycle management systems and follow-up, everything is in line with the MDR, to comply there with the European regulatory that we have there in that space. Now, for us, the nightmare scenario would be that when we have the AI Act and that starts getting translated into these harmonized standards, that some of these standards would contradict the standards that we already have established with the MDR. Or even if they don't contradict, maybe there are uncertainties, they are slightly different. Maybe often it's the same words, but they are defined differently, right, in MDR and in AI Act. And how do you deal with that? And for us, like as a large company, of course, we have specific legal teams that are looking and evaluating, and there, if we have then conflicting regulations, it's a risk, right? If we are talking smaller companies, startups or family business, I mean, where should they have the resources to even evaluate that? And that is the risk that we are facing, that we have different legislative frameworks that we need to comply with as an industry. So for that reason, again, maybe to take up my statement from the beginning, right? The MDR has pretty much all of these risk assessment, quality management steps, etc., that also the AI Act demands, right? And it also covers AI software already. So for us, ideally, we would use that. We would introduce new requirements in the AI Act that are coming up now, right? Make sure these are integrated also in MDR, and then have a single framework that we know, well, if we comply with that, then we are good, right?
Andreas, we keep maybe the timeline question for the end. So 24 months, 36 months, or 4 years, maybe even for implementation, if there's still chance that this happens within the discussion. But maybe, Nadja, we heard the role of standards is important. You actually, in your area, are not really working with harmonized standards. So that's a different angle you have on that implementation question, no?
Yeah, we have our BaFin, our authority here in Germany, and so they tell us what to do and what not to do. And of course, as we are a large company, we also have the European authority, EIOPA, who is watching over us. So we have not technical standards as such, but of course we have rules that the authorities are giving out. And then, of course, we have the legal frameworks, the Solvency II framework and the Insurance Distribution Directive framework, which also requires a certain, as I said, management systems or the other systems to exacting standards. So not really technical standards, but yes, we have some standards.
But actually similar in the process, maybe, of developing them, and the same challenge of exactly seeing what's already there, where might occur contradictions, and where we need to adapt maybe existing rules already. Maybe that's, Svea, also what's important for you, how you adapt maybe your working and the rules you're working with so far in preparation of the Act. Of course, besides the discussion of how much you fall in the scope with your general purpose AI.
So, of course, it's really hard to say what the AI Act will mean in practice for Google products at this point. I think I mentioned, maybe not, but since 2018, Google has principles that guide our development and deployment of responsible AI in our products and services. And principles always sound really lame, but it also goes a lot of work into actually implementing them in practice. So we sort of see two main pillars under that work. One is culture and education. So it's in the case of Google, it's decisions of technically more than 100,000 people every day that make or break our efforts to be responsible product providers. So it's really important to enable people in every part of the organization, so both engineers, product managers, lawyers, to really understand what these principles mean in practice, what they mean for their work, and how they can concretely implement them. And for that second part, structures and institutions are really important. So governance needs to be more than principles and education. So we also built a lot of tools to help our internal teams to test models, to better understand the data sets we're using, to provide transparency of our models, for example, through model cards. So those are all things that we're going to be building on in our AI Act compliance. And then in terms of risk assessment, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how risk assessments, for example, the DSA and the AI Act, how they might overlap, but that's a really big operation going underway at the moment. So it's hard to say right now how much that overlap will be.
You mentioned governance, of course, a slightly different context within a company, but we'll have governance systems needed for the implementation of the AI. I don't know, Andreas, if you can already, maybe besides the question of if there's any flexibility regarding the implementation period of the Act, also whether the government already thought about, okay, who's actually responsible for making sure that this regulation, companies are compliant with it and it's introduced in an efficient and effective manner.
Maybe just quickly, we also do not want conflicting requirements. And I think where it goes together is when industry is working on standards, on harmonized European standards. The new legislative framework, the NLF, is at its core industry-given standards, which will be, in a way, accepted by the state authorities. Then it's as if it would be legislation. So I think in an ideal world, we would have one standard, one harmonized European standard for whatever you are doing and need for your risk assessment. I think this is the joint task we have as legislator and standardization bodies and industry to be very quick. And I know that already the Commission is working on proposals for harmonized European standards. So, implementation periods, I mean, if there is a good reason that we need more time for the implementation of high-risk AI systems, again, high-risk AI systems, we're not doing this because we are bored or we don't have anything to do with it. This is because we're talking about high risk. But of course, if there's a reason that industry needs more time, we are open for discussion. But I think there's also a lot of expectancy that we should really take this regulation as soon into effect as possible. Now, governance. I mean, in a way, how we will decide on the governance framework in Germany will, of course, be depending to what has to be done. I would say that, but this is my personal opinion, we should see that the sectorial watchdogs should remain the watchdogs, like the BaFin or Bundesnetzagentur, Federal Network Agency, in electricity, for instance, or your medical devices. I don't know which is no, the agency or authority, whatever. So, but then of course we need some maybe back office support because there will be new questions, and of course there will be some coordination level because there cannot be 200 German authorities sitting at a table in Brussels when they discuss the implementation. So I think we need something. What is currently very much discussed is the stakeholder involvement. For instance, in the AI board. And the Commission did not propose it because to them it was quite clear that they don't have to legislate stakeholder involvement, because it's clear that there will be something like this. The question is, do we need a formal stakeholder involvement in the AI board? And this goes, I would say, with the specific tasks and function of the AI board. If it's a club of regulators, you need some room for open but closed discussions in a way. Open in the matter, but closed that not the media can be there or stakeholders. So I think this is something which both is clear we need both. And I think the discussions will go on how to involve stakeholders. In the last sentence, in the Data Governance Act, we, for instance, have a system that there will be a sub-level under the Data Innovation Board where stakeholders are involved. I don't know if this will be a match for the AI Act, but at least this is a proposal. I hope I answered all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andreas. I think we can see stakeholders are eager to be involved, as you can see here on the stage. Thank you all so much for being here, discussing with us the AI Act. I hope you have some food for thought for today and later our networking. And with that, I'm handing over to my colleague, Nadja, who will announce the next speaker, and we can leave.